All right, I'll let you see these two wonderful gentlemen's face. Yemi, just give me a hand raise if I'm having issues and I'll let you take over.
Sounds good.
In terms of introducing Johan further, Johan has been a VMware vExpert now for many years, so since 2015. You may have seen him in many sessions during VMware events, perhaps user groups. He's also been an EUC champion. He's authored the VDI design guide, and I think, hopefully I'm not leaking too much, Johan, you're looking at an update here coming soon to that. He's definitely a sought after speaker. You'll see many sessions with him. And he currently is very active in helping VMware customers on a daily basis through ITQ consultancy. So it's great to have someone who has that deep expertise plus the everyday experience that you have working through a lot of these experiences.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the introduction.
So just to kind of go through some of the challenges, right? Just to start to put everyone on the same footing. We hear this from many of our customers, and when we were working with Johan, we said, what are you hearing about in terms of some of the challenges for remote workers? And a lot of it really centered around simply not having enough information to really understand what is that home worker experience. And when that happens, when their issues do arise, there tends to be a lot of finger pointing. Is it because the home user's Wi-Fi? Is it because of something internal inside the organization? Is it storage? Is it network? Is it VMware Horizon itself? Is it the host layer? So all of this starts to lead to what is that root cause? And when you don't have visibility, it really drives poor communication, poor team management. It really elongates any type of solution. It also makes us really reliant on the end user. And all of us who work with end users recognize a lot of times feedback can be very subjective. And when you're asking them exactly when was it slow, what else was happening in your environment, how many applications did you have open, those answers change quite a bit. And the biggest challenge is many times users are simply apathetic. So you really don't fully understand what that user experience is and how you can adjust it. And the reason this exists is because the complexity in delivering a user experience, especially through VMware Horizon, really requires almost 15 different technologies to come together. So first, you think about all your different users. Some of them may have been working in offices, but many of them are now remote. So your users are unique. Where they're working from is unique. Their endpoint is unique. You haven't even gotten into the infrastructure, and you have a lot of variability around this. The different blast or PCoIP sessions they're kicking off are different. Their connection points, it might be home Wi-Fi, hotspot, in-office, public Wi-Fi. Then you've got the entire data center and infrastructure layer. So with that, you've got your secure gateway servers, your connection servers, your applications. We have a few people here that are in healthcare. For them, they're portraying their EHR applications. You've got your back-end servers like SQL databases, Profile, Active Directory, and then most of you will be using vSphere as your host layer. In addition to this, any or all of these component parts could be in the cloud as well as on premises. So there's a lot of complexity. So when your home user complains, my session is slow, my logon is slow, if you don't have visibility across each of these IT elements, it becomes extremely challenging to identify. Root cause could be because of bad profile setting in Active Directory, or it could be because of your home Wi-Fi connection. And so what do you need? You really need purpose-built tools, and we're talking about Horizon. We can do this for Citrix too, for end user experience. And you need purpose-built tools that are going to allow you to anticipate issues so you can prevent them. So that's going to automatically discover your entire environment. It's going to identify every IT element, failure point, and condition that could potentially impact user experience and automatically build alerts around that and identify thresholds. That's what I mean about anticipate, is using a tool that does that and takes the work out of your hands. You then need a tool that's going to give you very specific metrics and data, both historical and real time, that's allowing you to isolate root cause because you can see each of those IT elements that could impact. And finally, you need to be able to document that end user experience so you can foster collaboration across IT teams, vendors, management, users. You need to be able to share that data via export, integrate it with third-party tools like a ServiceNow or a Splunk, and enhance it with out-of-the-box reporting or other reporting tools like Power BI or Tableau. What we see with organizations, and we'll talk more about how they do that, when they invest in solutions like this, they truly transform from being reactive in IT to proactive. And a big key of this is, and I hinted at this, is having purpose-built software that's embedded with intelligence and automation so that you can identify all those key areas that potentially cause issues within the end user experience. When we talk to our customers, we often hear where issues most lie is around logon initiation, logon duration, or session performance. And so our solution will automatically identify each of these potential IT points of failure and alert you if performance thresholds are being exceeded. It's because of this that our clients often tell us that when they hire Goliath and use a purpose-built tool to monitor, it really replaces 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts. And I shouldn't say replace, we never have enough experts available. That's another big key challenge. So by having a tool that does the work for you, it really frees up those experts' time, like Johan, who can focus on bigger strategic initiatives, upgrading packages, going to the latest version like Horizon 8, bringing in the latest and greatest tools to really develop and build on that user experience. And so when we look at Goliath, and I'll be turning this over to Johan in a minute, if you look at each of these logos, each of them will tell you that that's what we've done. We've had the operational impact of hiring 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts that are not only isolating root cause of issues, but frankly, anticipating and actually solving them before end users can be impacted. I also want to show that we have scaled to support some of the largest IT infrastructures, but we also have an ease of use and price profile that allows us to scale to small and medium sized. And finally, we absolutely have a stronghold in healthcare. We have purpose-built modules for all the major EHR applications, Cerner, Epic, Meditech, Allscripts. We have business and technical relationships that allows us to build those modules and really provide a single pane of glass experience so that you can see performance data all the way from end user behaviors through the IT infrastructure to the EHR application. And so that's what highly differentiates us for any of those health systems out there that are listening in today. With that, I am going to turn it over to Johan and tell us a little bit more of your experience when it comes to what we're calling second day operations.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Stacey. So I guess that that most of the organization, maybe even every organization, had a challenge at the beginning of the year. I believe, well, I obviously live in the Netherlands, and we have a lot of customers, mostly working in healthcare, but also governmental organizations. And if you looked at in March, we had the first lockdown. Suddenly, everyone or a lot of companies had a big focus on work from home, and I strongly believe that every EUC team, so every end user computing team or VDI team at customers, have done a really good job in supporting the organization in that sudden scale. So most VDI environments probably weren't sized or built to handle a sudden increase of remote workers. And I know that a lot of companies also, set up stuff like DR, their DR capacity to run their normal operations on. And I think the first couple of weeks after the first lockdown, and I also believe that most countries have experienced the same thing, maybe in a different time frame, but the first lockdown started in March in the Netherlands, and after the lockdown, I would say like 4 to 5 weeks, most of the organizations began to become stable, right? So you survive the first couple of weeks, everything, most employees are working from home, and everything is relatively stable. Now, the next thing you need to focus on is how am I gonna survive the next 12 months? And that time frame with possibly more lockdowns or extended lockdowns, or people moving back to the office and suddenly come back again. And thus, a lot has changed. And I think the first bullet here is something, and we discussed the webinar a couple of days ago, and we came up with a term I really like. It's called the new end user, and the new end user is it's I think it states more about an organization and the sudden change that everything could, or a sudden change that could apply to both an end user perspective as well as an organizational perspective, but focused from the initiated from the end user. So a new end user now can work from anywhere, but also is probably accepting the fact that certain applications might not work or might not perform like they would expect upfront. And when looking, and we'll cover that later in the session as well, when looking at things like SLAs or things like your availability numbers or your performance requirements, all of those values that you thought were thresholds upfront now might have changed because the user slowly accepts the fact that the new normal also means that your VDI doesn't have to be state of the art to still fulfill the wishes of an end user and make sure that the organization is able to run their business or the mission critical applications. So instead of driving a Ferrari, they could also drive a Ford. And last week we mentioned a Datsun, but that might be a really old car. No, but you get the point. It doesn't have to be a Ferrari, because in a proper Ford, you can drive the same road. You could probably travel even further on a tank of gas, and well, it might even be more comfortable instead of faster or stronger or. So I think the whole term, the new end user, is something that we need to focus on, and that's what we're going to do in this webinar as well. So I think the second bullet point, capacity planning, is really important, and where we were sizing probably quite conservative upfront in previous projects, I think it's starting to become more normal to size somewhat more aggressively, to take your capacity also somewhat more aggressively in mind, because oversubscribing your capacity is something you could do differently than you did before. And again, we'll cover that in a later bit. And I think proactively monitoring your environment is becoming more and more important, because if a sudden change of capacity will happen, you need to do something to stay in control, and staying in control even in those new events like a pandemic is the most important thing. Can we go to the next slide, Stacey? Awesome, thanks. Now, user experience has changed like the new end user has changed. So user experience always is a hard thing to measure, and I always like to give an example. Is that I've been working on a project a couple of years ago in Saudi Arabia, no, sorry, in Abu Dhabi, and I was working with a customer that had, I came in because they had logon issues, and logon issues in terms of it could easily take 10 minutes in the morning before a user was signed in. And what they did was they went to a thin client, logged on, went to the coffee machine, get some coffee, and when they got back, they would probably just be logged on, right? Now, after the project was finished, and that was mostly due to the type of application they were using, we were able to reduce the logon time to 1.5 minutes. For them, that was a big increase of the user experience, and they were really satisfied with that. If I have a logon time of 1.5 minutes in a hospital, that would be a no-no. So 1.5 minutes is far too long, because at a hospital you want things like fast user switching. You need to have multiple users that could work with a certain application at the same time with tap and go functionality and stuff like that. So user experience is really important to know what the end user is expecting. So if you know what the user is expecting, it's also important to know what to monitor. It's really good to know what the CPU is doing, what your connection protocol is doing, what RAM is doing, and we'll go through a couple of those metrics in the demo, in the next demo. Like I mentioned before, one size does not fit all. 90 minutes log on time could be suitable for one environment. It couldn't be suitable for the other. And the same thing with things like CPU metrics. If you have an environment with an EMR application that is single-threaded and is continuously using 3 gigahertz of clock speed, that might sound normal, right? But if you have an environment that doesn't have such a single-threaded application, and the CPU is continuously spiking to 3 gigahertz, something might be wrong. So thresholds might differ per environment. And in order to if you know what to measure, it's really important to also to know where in the stack you need to measure that as well. So end-to-end monitoring requires insights. If you have a CPU that's spiking, it could be related to the virtual machine, it could be related to the underlying infrastructure. But if your CPU is doing nothing and still you have performance issues, maybe it's related to the network, maybe it's related to your storage, maybe it's related to the connection protocol. And to the end user, performance is all the same. So it doesn't work, I'm going to call my help desk. And now we need to get insights into what's really happening. In order to do that, you need the right tool for the job. And I think we're actually going to show that tool right now.
All right, thanks, Johan, and we'll jump right into the demonstration. So what we're going to do, first of all, is talk a little bit about some of the proactive portions of the technology. And this is a portion of the technology that will log on and launch applications or desktops being presented by Verizon on a scheduled basis. So this way you're getting ahead of issues that could potentially impact users' ability to access the environment before users start logging in. So you get essentially an early warning system. You're able to get ahead of those issues and then get details and screenshots into what those potential issues are, the error messages that show up, so that you're not only getting that early warning system, but you're getting insight into the troubleshooting process so that you can quickly get ahead of those issues, solve them, and limit the end user impact altogether. So before we jump into the technology, I wanted to set the stage a little bit. So I have this slide here, and this is essentially the deployment architecture of this technology. You have a central console. It's typically located in the data center. Of course, this could be in your local data center. If you have a hybrid environment, this could be in the cloud. And that's sort of going to be your central console, your management console for this for the technology. And then you have these remote launchers that are typically deployed at different office locations, or in this particular example here for a top airline, it was deployed in Amazon AWS. Of course, these launchers are set to mimic the users logging in. So you're gonna place this as close as possible to the users that are logging in. Now, of course, if everyone's working remotely, you can set these up in different regions across the entire globe or across the areas where users are sort of located, so you can test the external connection into your environment. And from these locations, as I mentioned, the applications or desktops are being launched on a scheduled basis. Typically, in an enterprise environment, this is being launched maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, hours before users start their workday. So, if there's an issue, you're aware of it. But as Johan mentioned, in healthcare, it's of course even more critical that you have this running 24/7. So we have a lot of healthcare customers of ours launching applications every 5 minutes 24/7 from all of their different hospital locations. This way, they're able to get ahead of issues before users are impacted. So to give you some perspective as to what's actually taking place from these different locations, I have a quick video here showing this technology actually launching a Horizon session. So from a particular location, technology is going to open up the Horizon client, log in the same way an end user would. It's going to, of course, confirm that the authentication was successful. It can launch the applications, or in this case, the desktop. In some environments, there are multiple, different applications and desktops that you would like to test, and it will go ahead and do that. And if there's any issue with any step of that process, IT now gets a real-time alert, and then they're able to analyze each of the launches from this particular view here, which is the Application Availability Analysis tab. And this is where, of course, this is your central management and configuration console for this technology. And this page, this sort of the analysis page, is broken down into two sections. You have the top section, which is a high-level dashboard of all of the launches taking place across the entire environment from your different locations. And you can see the blue bars here would represent the launch times, and the trend line is availability. So out of 100% at any point in time, how available are these resources that you're launching leveraging this technology? And if you look here at the top of the screen, you can filter based on the date range. You can filter based on the locations that you're launching these applications or desktops from. So in that Airline example, it's launching it from different regions in AWS. In health systems examples, for instance, we have a large health system with about 26 acute care hospital locations. Each one of those hospital locations would show up here under endpoints, and then you can filter based on the applications and desktops that you're launching. So this is a quick high-level view of availability. Now, if you've gotten an alert from a user saying that, or alert from the technology, not from a user, from the technology, that there was a failure on one of these launches, you can then look here at the bottom of the screen, where you can see the date and times of the launches, where what applications were being launched, where they were being launched from, and ultimately whether those launches were successful or if they failed. And if they did fail, what you can see is exactly at what stage it failed. So did it fail while trying to access the Horizon client or the specific machine? Did it fail during the authentication process? Did it fail when it opened up the Horizon view, but it wasn't able to see any applications or the correct application or desktop that was supposed to be launched? And not only that, you can then click on this magnifying glass icon where you can see screenshots of each step of the process up until the exact error message that would potentially present to the users if they've come across this issue. So not only the early warning system, but details down to screenshots of what potentially would present so that you can get ahead of these issues, solve them quickly before users are actually impacted. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Johan, and we can talk about some of the other things that we should consider.
Yeah, and to quickly add to your great demo is that one of the reasons, or I quite often work as an architect on big projects, and one of the things we always do as an architect is if you run through the design phase or the different design phases in a project, first phase is always a requirements gathering workshop where we discuss business requirements with the customer, and especially when looking at the number one business requirement for every customer, that's always based on availability of the service. So take in this case the Horizon service, so the VDI service, that needs to be available for a certain moment in time, but it also should perform, etc. What's really helpful in a solution like Demi showed just now is that the whole stack that's involved in achieving that availability is being tested. So you already know if your load balancers are working, if your connection servers are working, if your unified access gateways are working, if the certificates are still valid, if your if you're using app volumes, if your app volume servers are there, because everything that needs to be loaded to have the user session or the user context loaded that they're expecting is being tested. So you are aware directly when stuff is happening, actually before maybe even like a general monitoring solution of your internet connection or something else will alert. So I think it's really helpful, especially when looking at the remote logon functionality, that you are in control of the whole stack. That's the most important part of the first business requirements. So next thing is obviously troubleshooting, and one of the most common issues we see at customers is either related to slow logons or slow performance. Right now, already explained in the previous slides that performance is quite relative. So we always need to check what the customer is expecting, the end user expecting, and how relative that performance is. If I am a developer, or no, if I'm a graphical designer, and I need to have, let's say, at least 30 frames a second being rendered over 4K. Performance in that case means something completely different than someone that might work with an EMR application and is just typing. So they're probably transferring maybe 5 frames a second or maybe 10 frames a second in a probably also smaller resolution. So performance in that case is relative. 10 frames per second for one user could be sufficient, while 30 frames per second on a different resolution might not be. So again, know your users and your use cases. If you know what to look for, it's a really good thing to check out what the thresholds of those metrics are. And if you know that, validate those metrics with the user. So it's always good to have an overview of when like a benchmark, when is my system performing really good, and are my users happy? What do my metrics say then, comparing to I'm experiencing performance issues from one or more users, and now my metrics are doing something completely different. So find out for yourself, for your own environment, where those thresholds are, and compare them to the opinion of your end users. And I think that's the third bullet. Listen to your end users is really important. They are your advocates for the environment. An end user computing project fails if your end users are complaining. I think that makes end user computing also the most challenging, from a positive way, challenging field to work in, because you have the ability to directly talk to end users. And if they are happy, the entire organization is happy. So listen to the end users. Now, RCA, so root cause analysis, troubleshooting is essential. And like I mentioned, metrics can say something, but if you look, and we talked about this in one of the previous slides, if you experiencing performance issues, and they could be related to CPUs, it's always a good idea to check the whole stack. So if, for instance, my CPUs are not spiking, but I still have CPU-related issues, it could be due to the fact that the vSphere hosts, so the hypervisors that are underneath your virtual desktops, might experience different CPU-related issues. Your ready times could be too high due to the fact that you have oversubscribed the environment, or maybe you have virtual machines, virtual desktops running with a wrong CPU sizing. So maybe, I don't know, virtual machines with 8 virtual CPUs, while your physical environment doesn't have the capability of scheduling those. So it's really good to measure and to check every layer in the stack when troubleshooting, and a tool that gives you an overview of that entire stack is essential. Now, Logon is something that's really hot as well. So we, especially customers that have been working with Active Directory for a really long time, are really experienced with or have a lot of GPOs. And I've been working with customers that work with Active Directory for like 20 years and have a ton of GPOs also built for previous versions, but excluded sometimes not. And suddenly you have like 1,000, maybe 10,000 settings that might be loaded, considerations being considerations being built in, and that entire process takes a long time. What is really essential is to get a deep, strong knowledge of the entire logon process, from the first moment a user types in a password until the desktop is being presented. There's a lot of different steps along the way that are being taken, and all of those individual steps could have a positive or a negative impact to the logon process. What we see most is that Active Directory related issues, DNS related issues, time sync related issues, but also GPO related issues are most common when talking about really slow logons. And it's really important to also have a solution in place to that enables you to check that environment. Now, for Horizon, there's a really good opportunity to really dive deep into the logon process, and there's an option in the Horizon agent called the Logon Monitor. Be sure that if you are deploying a new desktop pool with Horizon agents, to enable network logon monitoring, and also to enable through a GPO the logon monitoring process, because it's a separate thing you need to enable. Now, checking that logon log file is really good when going deep into logon troubleshooting. But still, I think, again, it's really essential to have a tool that presents an overview of everything within the main steps within the process. And if I'm not mistaken, Yemi is going to show us another demo.
Yeah, absolutely. And Johan,
Cool.
I think that you've sort of put things in a really good perspective here, right? Because the two major things that show up with performance is slow logons and in-session performance, right? So it's, what we've heard from our customers is that it's very essential for you to have all of the things that impact the user session in a single view, so that you can click through and figure out exactly why the slowness is coming from, where the slowness or why there's issues within the session. In order to do that, you must have everything that impacts their session in a single view. And that's what we're going to present here for this demonstration. So right now, what we're looking at is our VMware Horizon, or there it is, our VMware Horizon session display. And this is where all of the sessions in the environment populate. You can see you have the ability to go back and look up historical sessions. So we actually do not average or roll up any information that we collect within the technology. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. There we go. So essentially, you can go back 2 days, 3 days, 30 days, and see data or for sessions with the same amount of granularity as you would from a session from today or an active session, which allows you to make these correlations and see, okay, what has changed in the environment? Why are we having issues today that we weren't having a week ago or a month ago? You can see exactly what has changed during that particular time period. But let's go further into it, right? You can isolate users quickly. So let's say a user calls in saying, my session is slow. You can isolate the user, by either filtering or searching using this quick filter section at the top of the screen. You can then click down on that session. And once you click on the session, you get a pop-up here of 7 tabs that aligns all of the components that impacted this user session and metrics from those components in a single view, so that you now have a view on the logon duration. You have a view on their connection, right? Whether it's PC over IP or blast. You have a view of the VM that was supporting this particular user session. And then to Johan's point, you have a view of the hypervisor host that was supporting that underlying VM, down to the processes and applications that the user was running and what resources they were taking up, even down to the alerts, out of the box alerts with the embedded intelligence and automation of the technology, where we're looking for conditions, failure points, thresholds, any of these alerts that have triggered during this user session, you would be able to see here, even down to the event logs. So any application or system error or warning events that have taken place during the user session, they all present in a single view. And of course, a lot of our customers like that because of, when they have non-persistent VDI machines where these logs are all lost, you have all of these historically within the technology. So that if there is any issue that shows up within a particular user session, by the time you've traversed through a number of tabs, you can emerge with some sort of answer. So if we start off and we take, for instance, one of the most common ones, which would be session performance, you can then take a look at PC over IP tab, where you could see the round trip time and relate that specifically to the amount of connection, essentially the download speed that this user has at their location. So in this case, this user probably wasn't having the worst session with their round trip time at about 60, 70 milliseconds. But you can see that their connection speed which is this metric here, this is their download speed at their location, how much bandwidth they have for the Horizon client wherever they're located, whether it's their home office, whether it's a Starbucks, right? Whether it's they're on the road and they're using a mobile hotspot. You can see that this user had about a meg connection. So if this user started to have some issues, you can point to the fact that they don't have enough connection speed in order to deliver a good Horizon experience. But you can also take a further look into it, right? You can see here at the bottom left-hand side chart, you can see the different types of bandwidth being used within their session. So you can see the audio bandwidth and how much bandwidth is being leveraged for input and output audio, imaging bandwidth, client drive redirection. So these sort of things allow you to get additional visibility into not only their connection, their performance, but essentially their behavior and how that actually drives or correlates with latency and issues that take place within their session as well. So this is, of course, very helpful for diagnosing or trying to get visibility into network-related issues that impact the user session. Of course, the network is not just the only thing, right? We now have the VDI, right, itself. You can take a look at performance for the time frame of this session. So you can see what resource utilization looked like from a CPU percentage, memory utilization, network and bandwidth, storage queue length, disk latency. So is it a resource problem on that machine or is it a storage problem? And then tie that information back down to the hypervisor host as well, where you see those same metrics. You can see what data stores are attached to that host. And if you look here at the bottom of the screen, you can also see what other VMs are being supported by that host. So to Johan's point, maybe there isn't a VM specific problem. Maybe it's a host problem. You can confirm that by seeing all of those other VMs that are being supported. And if you see a whole bunch of red here, then you know it's a host related issue and you can escalate quickly without having to go through and open up different consoles and RDP to machines themselves to be able to get this sort of information. So that's, of course, very helpful for troubleshooting those sort of in-session performance issues. But then we can also take a look at the logon performance, right? Where, as Johan mentioned, a lot of different things go into different logons to different organizations. This portion of the technology is going to expand these different sections where you can see from an authentication perspective, what OUs this user is a part of, what domain controller was in charge of authenticating the session, how long it took for LDAP calls to take place. And very, very useful in this, something that is very useful in this is the group policy section, where you can expand that and see each individual group policy that is affecting this particular user session down to the policy name. So whether it's a drive mapping policy, whether it is a shortcut extension, whether it's an installation extension, excuse me. And you can not only see the names of the policies, but you can see how long each one is taking to execute. So essentially, in a lot of those scenarios where you're having a lot of GPOs applying to user sessions, you can essentially collapse the troubleshooting timeframe, because here you can see the exact group policy that is affecting and could be causing these slownesses inside of the session, so you can focus on solving that specific issue, as opposed to looking through your different consoles and all of those other areas where policies can affect sessions, essentially cutting down the troubleshooting times exponentially. Anything to add here, Johan? Would this sort of information be valuable when troubleshooting issues when it comes to user experience?
Well, I think this is essential, and one of the things that customers tend to forget is that user experience monitoring is not the same thing as monitoring your service. So the fact that a Horizon environment is still running and that the certificate is valid is a great thing. It's really good to know. But I experienced it myself a couple of years ago that I worked at the company, and one of the employees at the company, I would say that was already like 10 years ago. She worked from home quite often and on a remote connection, and quite often she also had connectivity issues, and we needed to troubleshoot that. Now, if someone has connectivity issues, so frames being dropped, etc., it's really hard to troubleshoot that if you don't have a near real-time overview of what's actually happening. So having an environment or a solution like this really helps. The reason why I still remember that issue like 10 years ago is that the Wi-Fi or the connectivity issues were caused to a Wi-Fi connection that dropped on a regular basis, and specifically during times she used a microwave to warm something. And along the way, we found out just by using a really good tool to troubleshoot and to talk to the end user that was specifically the case. But yeah, Yemi, you show all of the essential information here that especially a first line support or a first line support employee needs to be able to help, really help the user, and probably have an answer to performance related issues within seconds, maybe a minute, instead of having to troubleshoot with different tools, with different solutions, digging in the entire stack. So yeah, this is essential.
Sounds good. I feel like I couldn't have said that better myself. So
Cool.
Great job there.
Probably less Dutch, but yeah.
Different accent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll pass it back over to you, and we can talk about then the final piece, right, which would be documentation.
Yeah, and I think documentation is not something you do just do afterwards. I think when talking about documentation in general, design documentation, SLAs, it's really good to start to look in what is my new end user, my own new end user looking like. What is their new expectation of the environment? Are they still expecting a Ferrari, or is that different brand of car, that less expensive car, also really sufficient for my mission and business critical processes to still continue, and also in the what we call new normal, so from home, from basically any location, right? So to take a look at the SLA, take a look at your design that you might already have, and see if the business requirements you currently have in place are still valid, and maybe even consider different kinds of requirements or different kinds of values when you are looking at the new design phase. Now, a second thing is more related to troubleshooting. So What we did with the microwave issue was to keep track of timestamps. So eventually, like after a couple of weeks, we found out that this was the issue. But in order to get that real overview of what's happening, you need to keep track of those timestamps, right? And not every solution is capable of recording months and months of data, because especially when looking at, and that's the last bullet, but let's talk about it already, especially when looking at the log files from, for instance, Horizon, they have a certain retention policy, and log files will overwrite. So make sure to store log files and keep track of timelines. And the Goliath solutions will definitely help with that. Now, root cause analysis. So RCA, my bad, instead of RTA. No, root cause analysis is really important to solve your the majority of your issues. In some of the cases, you might have a solution earlier than others, or have found the cause earlier than others, and having a tool that gives you a true overview of everything that's happening, both from a service perspective. So in the first demo that Yemi showed, you really get an overview of the actual service. Then you'll have a second form of monitoring, we call end user or user experience monitoring, and the third being capacity planning or capacity monitoring. I think if all of those three, if you can keep track of all of those three through, in this case, a single solution, that's really, really helpful to stay in control, to be in control, to stay in control also in the near future. And when looking at root cause analysis, having those three different types of monitoring into a single overview or a single solution, that'll definitely help with that root cause analysis, and hopefully avoid issues from happening, especially when looking at your capacity, preactive monitoring, etc. So I think I'm going to hand it over back to you, right?
Yeah, and thanks. I think that's a really good segue into some of the other things that we wanted to show, specifically on documentation. You're leveraging the technology for troubleshooting, and you found the issues. Right now, a lot of times it's very important to then track these things and show the improvements over time, and to show management, hey, this is what happened since we've implemented this, workspace or this environment management software, or this is what happens when we have upgraded our hardware. So it's very important to be able to track this information historically, and that's what Goliath enables you to do. So I'm just going to quickly run through a number of different reports that we have sort of furnished our customers with to do just that, track information over time, to show the SLAs, to show that you've been able to isolate root cause and improve the environment, improve the user experience over time. So the first one here is one that leverages, these are very focused on logon duration, because these are very, very tangible things that you can present to management and present to customers, showing the improvements. So the first one, of course, you can see logon duration for a particular day at the top based on a particular group. But then it also breaks it further and shows the different stages of the logon process within those averages. And then, of course, you can see the weekly average, the max load, and things like that. So this is very focused on logon duration, but of course, still leveraging the granular information that's presented, that's present in the technology. Another one focused on logon duration, but this one is more focused on overall showing a correlation between session count and logon duration increases. As users are logging into the environment at the same time, are there correlations then with slower logons? And are these correlations or these sort of slight increases in logon duration, or is it something that is massive? Is it something that can potentially cause multiple issues whenever users log in at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. in the morning? Other ones here break down different users. right? So you can see maybe a particular user or groups of users are experiencing increases in logon times, and you would want to show, track a particular user sessions, and maybe even pull in some additional information like what applications they're using, or desktops they're using, what's their environment look like from a network perspective. You can sort of create these reports that are going to leverage a number of the different information that we collect and track them over time to be able to show improvements, or to show that it might be actually someone's connection that could be the root cause of their slowness, with objective data. So these are all reports that we've created for our customers, leveraging the deep data, customize them in a little bit, leveraging tools like Power BI and Tableau. But keep in mind, of course, that we have a number of out-of-the-box reports that can give you visibility into a lot of those things that impact the user sessions. For instance, the underlying infrastructure. So here we're showing the ESX host performance over a particular time. We can track, of course, the user experience for those users. We can also track, logon times. Put it in a CSV format, so you can sort of take that information and maybe leverage your own Excel templates or Power BI templates to sort of slice and dice the data in a ways that's going to really allow you to consume it, and deliver a better experience for your users. Any questions, thoughts there, Johan, before we pass it over to Stacy?
Not really. I think the thing that I played with in my lab is also somewhat more application related insights. So I think something that's really cool is that you guys have different like dashboards for different types of applications, including major EMR applications. And I think that's really, really cool, because that's not something that a lot of others your competitors are focusing on. They're just focusing on mainstream user experience, like having those horizon related metrics, those vSphere related metrics. But at the end, user experience is important when focusing on the application. The application
Right.
decides if something is mission critical or business critical. And if Epic is not working, or Epic is not performing, it might be related to the underlying infrastructure. So I think that what's really cool is that you guys can give that, or show that aspect of user experience as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and to your point, I think it's very, very important, because a lot of times we focus on just the delivery method of the application, but when you pull in the application itself, you get end-to-end visibility. I know that's something that people say a lot, but you really can't call it end-to-end visibility if you don't have the ability to drill into Epic and see data from Epic System Pulse in the same console as where you're troubleshooting Horizon or any other delivery method for that application. So I think that is a very, very good point. And we do have the ability to track that within, whether it's with dashboards or historical reports as well. So thanks for bringing it up. That's a really good point.
Absolutely.
And with that, I'll pass it over to Stacy so we can wrap up and get into questions.
Great. Thanks, Yemi and Johan. Very good information. We already have several questions coming in, so please go ahead and submit them. One question that typically comes up is, how can I get up and running, right? How long would it take to use Goliath? The answer is we can really get you up and running in less than 2 hours. We do that through our white glove implementation services. As we've mentioned, a lot of that embedded intelligence and automation is out of the box. So you will work with our technical consultant to get all of the out of the box reports and alert functionality in your environment. And then a lot of the work is done for you, right? That's why our customers say we have the operational impact of hiring 2 to 3 full-time experts that are always on and always available. So with that, I am going to turn it over to questions. So the first one comes from Arnolfo. I'm going to totally butcher his name, but he said, hello, Johan. About the console you just showed, is that console a component of Horizon? So it might be some of what Yemi showed, but I'll let you answer. Did you hear me, Johan?
Yes, but I think Yemi showed the actual console.
Yeah, yeah, I can take that one, Stacy. Yeah, so the console that was shown, that is not a component of Horizon View. That is, yeah, that was the Goliath Technologies performance monitor. And that is, you know, what our customers are able to leverage and able to get in order to get those sort of metrics and troubleshoot issues, export, share, enhance data. And of course, also it also has the proactive portion, right? That logs on and launches applications on a scheduled basis. This is completely outside of the native Horizon functionality. Hopefully that.
Yeah, and they basically enhance the Horizon visibility, because if you want to troubleshoot Horizon, you can do so from signing into a virtual desktop and seeing what's happening there. You can open up the events database from the Horizon console, see what's happening there. You can use a different tool to monitor the metrics or the performance of your connection servers. But at the end, bringing them all together in a single console is saving a lot of time when troubleshooting or when staying in control over your performance.
Perfect. And actually, Yemi, if you want to go back to the last slide, I'll do a quick shout out as questions come through. If anyone listening is interested in a copy of Johan's book, we at Goliath, as a sponsor, have been providing this free to you. So don't hesitate to go to goliathtechnologies.com, the VDI design guide, and we will get one out to you. Of course, barring some COVID shipment issues we've run into, but we'll do our best to get it there in a timely manner.
Yeah, and to add to that, what's also really cool to know is that in 2021, I'll be hopefully, well, no, I will probably be, no, I will for sure be releasing a new version of the book. But I'm currently in the writing process, and what always helps is, you know, some more guidance from other people in the field. And I have a Twitter handle called @VDIDesignGuide. And what I do on a regular basis is send out polls, which the followers can answer to. And I ask all sorts of questions. And the questions, or the answer to the questions, will direct or will focus on the direction of the book. So, for instance, in the previous version, I didn't have a focus on Linux VDI. Now I have, because a lot of people are demanding Linux topics. And so I'll send out a bunch of polls in the next couple of weeks as well. And if any of the attendees would like to answer them, that's always really helpful. And it helps shape the book. So that's you can actually be part of the book.
Nice. Very nice. So please do help Johan out there. All right. Next question. And Johan, this one's for you from Eddie. In troubleshooting slow sessions for home workers, how have you personally adjusted your troubleshooting style?
That's a really good question. Well, one of the things that I discovered is that, again, that end users are now accepting that sometimes it might be a little slow, and that's okay because they can do the work anyways. What I adjusted in my troubleshooting style, I would say, is well, first of all, be sure at customers to have always have a fixed set of tools to do the same thing over and over again. So don't reach out to different tools when troubleshooting. Always use the same tool. That's really important. Second of all, I think it's really important to take a look at your metrics and your thresholds and reevaluate them based on what the user is accepting right now. So that's definitely also something. And another thing is that VDI nowadays is more suitable for more different use cases. So when you look years back, VDI was mainly used for let's say static use cases, so call center employees or certain employees within a hospital, or employees that don't have a big application set, that don't have they don't change a lot, so really non-persistent use cases. But now with all the the new innovations coming in, new CPUs from Intel and AMD, the new types of GPUs that have been introduced, we can actually include basically any type of use case on a VDI. Could be a developer, could be a data scientist, could be a different type like media. I've worked on a project for a video editing solution that needed to run on VDI. Based on all those different use cases, your troubleshooting methodology might change as well, because again, user experience will change or will be different depending on the type of use case. And so it might be good to look at the right tools for the job and reevaluate those thresholds when troubleshooting.
Great. Yemi, I think this one's for you from Dennis. Who are the typical users of a monitoring tool like this, and how many people does it take to manage Goliath?
Yeah, well, the typical users, I think something that customers find helpful with our technology is that we have different views that are in the technology that are useful to different levels of troubleshooting. So anyone that's going to be troubleshooting, managing a Horizon or Citrix environment has specific views that they could take a look at in the technology. For instance, we were talking about the session display. We have a summary view that is very heavily used by help desk, because it pulls in some of those key metrics that allows you to come up with answers. So quickly you can tell, is this user having a round trip time problem? Yes, okay. Is their connection speed poor or good? If it is good, then okay, maybe we need to escalate over to level 2. But if it's poor, then we should have a conversation with the user and say, hey, it looks like your connection speed dropped at 3 p.m. What happened at 3 p.m.? Those sort of insights can allow you to limit the amount of escalations. Moving forward, of course, if you're level 2 or level 3, you're able to leverage the reporting capabilities and the ability to export, share data, enhance data to be able to come up with answers and long-term plans on how to improve user experience. Or if you wanted to drill further into the underlying hypervisor host, the group policies, so that you can troubleshoot those escalated tickets, you have the ability to do so. So the technology is typically used by anyone within the troubleshooting stack because we have focused views for each one of those levels.
Great, thank you. We have from Mary Ann, and I think you kind of hinted at this, Johan, but she asked, when troubleshooting VMware, what should I check in ESXi host or storage? Is it SAN or is it vExpert to see if it's causing slowness?
Well, that could be a lot of things. So vExpert basically is vSAN with the vSphere layer on top of it, so ESXi. And it honestly doesn't really matter from a performance perspective if it's so vSAN is a virtual SAN, so a hyperconverged infrastructure, and it doesn't really matter depending on the type, what the type of storage is. It's always really good to look at your storage latency. So make sure that the average storage latency is below 5 milliseconds. It might spike once in a while until 10, but certainly must not exceed 10 milliseconds. So that's really, really important, and that's independent of the type of storage. What was the other part of the question, Stacy? Was it purely storage related?
Yeah, it said host or storage.
Right, and from the host perspective, if you look at the combination from host and storage, sure, when talking about an HCI, the disks are local, so it's really important to check the throughput from vSAN. You can do that as well from within vSphere, so from within the vCenter client. And I think if you look at shared storage, the throughput on your HBA, so your network cards basically that connect to shared storage, is also really important. Check out what the throughput is. Latency should be the same, especially when looking at shared storage, it's really important to check that things like storage processors on the storage side are okay, are not spiking, are not causing for increased latencies or frame drops or stuff like that. So yeah, I would probably check that.
Perfect. One last question here, unless anyone else has any. And again, this might go to Johan here. Is there anything that you're doing differently when it comes to monitoring and troubleshooting Horizon 8, vCenter 7 than you have with older versions?
No. Well, not really. So Horizon 7 and Horizon 8 are quite comparable in terms of the types of functionality. The only thing that really differs is that, for instance, the security server technology that we knew in the Horizon 7X branch has been deprecated. So there's no security server anymore. You need to take care of monitoring your unified access gateways instead. The same thing with the Composer service that has been deprecated. And it totally depends on the type of functionality that you want to use. Are you still going to use true SSO? Are you going to integrate with SAML authentication and use external services for that? So I think most of the new cloud-related components that have been integrated into Horizon, they need to be monitored as well. And since they're cloud-related components and you subscribe to those services, they're basically SaaS-based services. You should take that into account when defining your own SLAs. What's the availability of those services? How should I monitor them? And still monitor your on-prem solution as well.
Wonderful. Well, that wraps it up. I want to thank you again, Johan, for joining us on this webinar, as well as you, Yemi. If anyone does have any questions, comments, as you heard, Johan's available at VDI Design Guide there on Twitter, and he's always looking for some feedback, as you said. And here
Absolutely.
at Goliath, if you're interested in a demo, a free trial, we offer free trials of the software. Please do email techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com, and we'll be happy to get back to you. I want to thank everyone for your time today, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their day and week. Thanks, everyone. Cool. Bye-bye.
Guys.
Bye-bye.